Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Kentucky Spin's webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about surviving challenging behaviors, and we have Carol Cecil with us from Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. But before we get started with the presentation today, I want to introduce myself. I am Stella Beard with Kentucky Spin, and I want to talk just a few minutes to each of you all a little bit about some housekeeping and then just a little bit about Kentucky Spin and what we do for families. First of all, on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a dashboard. On that dashboard, there are a couple of things I would like to point out to you. The first thing is you will see a little arrow and a drop-down box that says Handout. When you click on that little drop-down box, it should expand, and you will see the PowerPoint presentation from today there. You are free to download that file now, or later this afternoon, you will receive a follow-up email with a certificate of completion and also the PowerPoint from today's presentation. If you choose not to download it right now, that's totally fine. You will get that in a follow-up email. Also, Carol is going to want everyone to be interactive today, so we have a couple of options for you. Some of you can see a drop-down box that says chat. If you do, you can type in that little box and interact with Carol when she requests that during the presentation. If you're not able to do that on your end of the chat box, you can drop down the box that says questions, and you can type your answer or question in that box. Please click send to all, and we will all see that. And that way, I also have Kelly and Michaela on the call with us today, and they will be participating, and they will be helping monitor questions. So please type anything you would like in that question box, and we will be sure and answer those. I want to tell you just a little bit about Kentucky Spin. Kentucky Spin is the Special Parent Involvement Network, and we are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky, or the PTI. And something real interesting is every state has a Parent Training and Information Center. Some states have two, depending on their size. Kentucky has one, and that would be Kentucky Spin. And we are actually funded by the U.S. Department of Education under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And we have been the Parent Training and Information Center since 1988, which is actually when Kentucky first received the PTI grant. We provide training, information, and support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, birth through age 26. We work with families, parents, and professionals. And we just received notification not too awfully long ago that we did receive the grant for another 5 years. So we're very excited that we get to continue to be the PTI for the state of Kentucky. On this screen, you will see some things, one thing that we do not do, and we do not act as attorneys. So we are not going to be giving families legal advice or anything like that. But what we do is we empower families to effectively advocate for their children. I know when my son was younger and in school, he's 24 now, he has an intellectual disability. It was really hard for me to find resources. And I found Kentucky Spin early on, which was a tremendous help. And it's pretty exciting now that I'm actually working for Kentucky Spin that was able to help me so many years ago. And so that's what we do, is we provide that peer support to help families access needed information and resources. And all of our staff and consultants are either parents who have a child or a young adult like myself with a disability. They either have a disability themselves or they're a sibling of someone with a disability. So I love that we're able to interact with families with that, having that knowledge of been there and are able to help families understand and receive and find those resources that sometimes are kind of challenging for families to find. This slide here we show pretty much on all of our webinars right now. It's just together we can accomplish great things for our children, and none of us have all the answers, but we are all working through this pandemic and adjusting as we go. And I'm happy to say that back in March, when COVID first became part of our world back then, we went to an all virtual platform. And so we have been doing webinars on Tuesdays and Thursdays pretty much every week since March. So we have still been able to get those trainings and resources, and our video library now is very, very rich and full with wonderful, valuable information. And you will receive a link this afternoon to our video library. This presentation that Carol will be doing today will be up on our webinar in a couple of weeks. So you can go back and review it later if you would like. And so I'm very excited that we have Carol Cecil with us. She is the Executive Director for the Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. And Kentucky SPIN is fortunate that we do get to partner quite a bit with KPFC. And so we work with Carol on a lot of different projects. And I'm so excited that she is our special guest today. So Carol, I am going to give you all the control right now so that you are able to share your screen with us and get the presentation started.
All right, thank you.
Here we go.
All right. Let me get my PowerPoint.
And don't forget, guys, if you have questions, please put those in the question box for us, and we will get those to Carol.
All right, Stella, are you seeing the slide or the slideshow?
No, I'm not seeing anything right now.
All right, well, let me try again. We did this once, and it keeps popping up differently.
There we go. I see. If you'll just do your slide from the beginning now, we should be okay.
So you can see the slides without seeing my whole slideshow to the side?
I see the slide, but I also see the slides on the side too, so it's not in the presenter mode yet.
I don't have it in presenter view, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. Let me see if I can. Oh well, we might have to go with what we got.
Maybe
Sorry.
if you click from the beginning over there, would that help?
Well, it's showing on my other screen as the slideshow. It's on this screen that it's not showing as the slideshow, and I'm not sure why. That's what we were playing with a while ago.
Carol, it's Kelly. You may be able to, on the ribbon there on your PowerPoint, I have to select which computer screen I want it to present on.
Okay.
So that may help you. I don't know, but I know where I use dual monitors as well. I usually have to change the screen that I want it to present to.
All right, thank you.
No matter how many times we do presentations now, it just seems like we always have a little bit of a glitch, but we're going to get through it.
Sorry. And Stella and I got on here early and even practiced, so it isn't like we didn't care. So
we did, didn't we?
Yes. And we knew
That's
this
all
would
right.
That's all right. Okay, let me see if you can see it now.
And then now maybe from the beginning.
Can you see it now?
We do. I see your slide still on the left side, but we do see the one slide on the front, so I think that will be just fine. Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, thank you. For some reason, it won't let me slide the full presentation mode over here. I don't know why. So as Stella has said, we're going to talk about surviving challenging behaviors. This is usually a 2 to 3 hour session. I have abbreviated it for the 1 hour session. I will be offering the 2 hour session on the evening of December 22nd. If you're interested in the full version of it, And for that, you could register at kypartnership.org if that's something you're interested in. But here's what we're going to work on today is identifying challenging behaviors for every parent. That most challenging behavior is often very different. And that's okay because it's based off our strengths and our areas of need of which behaviors really bother us and which ones really no big deal. We're going to talk about strategies because I am also a parent who has raised 4 children. 2 of my 2 older boys were siblings that my husband and I adopted through foster care. And then we have 2 birth children. And our youngest birth child also struggled with some anxiety and depression, which affected his behavior. And so things that I'm sharing today, strategies, it'll be strategies you all share through the chat box, but it'll also be strategies that I've tried or that I've heard parents try. I've been in this position for 21 years. So over the years, I've collected a lot of good information from the parents and try to kind of share that wealth on. We're going to talk about basket thinking, and then hopefully we'll have time for questions. Thank you for putting up KPFC's website in the chat box. I appreciate that. So challenging behaviors. We're going to start with that, and I'm going to ask you all to put in the chat box, what is that one behavior that makes you look like this mom or this dad? What is driving you crazy? And Stella, if somebody from Spin can read any answers, talking back. That's always a popular one. I'm seeing them, so right now I'm good. Throwing things. That's it. We only got 2. You parents are in good shape. Aha, hitting. Yep. Lying. Okay, I just have to admit, lying is like my biggest pet peeve. I don't do well with it. Spitting.
There's a few too, Carol. One says, increase temper tantrums when trying to remain calm and redirect, yelling and blaming.
Say that, yelling and blaming?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we've got a pretty good list. I don't know if, are y'all seeing the PowerPoint now, Stella, or are you able to see the worksheet I put up?
I see your Word document right now.
Okay, perfect. We're going to come back to this Word document in a little while and talk about why our child might be acting these ways, why they're showing that behavior, and then we're going to come back and talk about strategy. So we'll come back to this. I just wanted to capture it while we were talking about it. So I'm going to make that one go down. All right. So I'm going to guess when I showed this picture last Friday with the parents we had on, they all started chuckling, and I could see them, so I could see their faces that as soon as they saw that picture, they were like, oh my gosh. And so I know, especially right now with COVID and all of you, or many of you, trying to work from home, be mommy and the teacher, and do all the other things you do as the mom or the dad, that it is really challenging. I've had quite a struggle with empty nest syndrome. And the reality is, once COVID hit and people had to start homeschooling their kids, I was like, okay, this empty nest isn't so bad after all. So let's move on forward. This is the one thing that if you get nothing else from our time together this morning, the one thing you need to get is that your child's behaviors equals needs. That's how they communicate to us. They don't go, I'm so angry, I feel like throwing this chair across the room. Or my feelings were hurt at school, and so I'm going to spit on you. That's not what they say. They just act out, and that those positive and negative behaviors are showing us what they need or which needs are being met. And so make sure you understand that the behaviors are a way that your child communicates with you because they're little or young and they don't have the words to put into place for what's going on in here and in here, in their heads and in their hearts, and what's going on inside between the two. So just remember that those behaviors equal needs. So the next piece of that is you have to meet that underlying need if you're going to change the behavior. I don't know about you all, but I'm the queen on behavior modification. I know how to do my tables and put the stickers on there. I know how to do all of that. And that can work and it can be helpful. But besides changing the behavior that you do not want, you have to help your child learn the behavior you do want to see. So oftentimes you have to meet that underlying need. So why is the child acting out this way? And how am I going to help meet that need that they are communicating through their behavior to me? So those are the two big pieces to take home. Behaviors equal needs. That's how your kids communicate to you. And you have to meet that underlying need. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. So most of us, when we discipline, and this is me too, I had to learn, we do this part over here, the learn new behavior or change undesirable behavior. And that's kind of like what I was saying with the behavior chart. You can teach a new behavior, or you can reduce a behavior you don't like, but you have to do this first step. It's a two-part approach. So many of us will do this part, and so our child will quit doing that behavior, but they will pick up an equally annoying behavior to replace it if the underlying need is not being met. So that's pretty important. So you have to always think of whether or not your discipline approach is meeting both of these steps. Is it meeting the underlying need? And is it going to reduce the undesirable behavior or increase the behavior you want? So I'm not sure how many of you all are aware of the hierarchical needs. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time on them today. This is part that I cut out because we're only having an hour together, but I wanted to go over it kind of quickly. Physiological needs, we all have those, and that's whatever our body needs to physically stay alive. We know we have to have food. We know we have to have water. Our body has to sleep at some time, and we have to have some amount of warmth so that we don't freeze and our body stops working. A lot of people think that shelter comes under this, but it doesn't. Shelter comes under safety. Safety is really important for families who are raising children that have had early trauma. So whether you're a biological parent and your child has experienced some trauma and you've changed your life now, but some of those behaviors are still there, or whether you're a foster or adoptive parent and you are raising a child that has experienced some early trauma, many of our kids that have had that early trauma, they get stuck in the safety needs area a lot of times. And that's because safety includes shelter, which does protect you from the elements, and we hope it protects you from bad people. But safety is also about having rules and understanding the rules. In our society, it's the laws. We understand the laws. Hopefully we follow the laws. And if we don't, then someone's going to hold us accountable. And the same happens in our home. We have rules, we have accountability, we have processes. You do this, this happens. And most of our kids can quote that verbatim. If I do this, this is what will happen. If I do that, this is what will happen. So they hear us. They just don't always process it. So also under safety needs for our kids that have had any types of early trauma might be freedom. What falls under that as being safe is freedom from fear, chaos, and anxiety. So for my older boys that I adopted from the foster care system, they had lots of early trauma in their little lives. And so they did not have freedom from fear, chaos, and anxiety. It was a physically, sexually, and emotionally abusive home for them at that time. And so they learned the world wasn't safe. They learned you can't trust the adults. So if you have children that have had that early trauma, that could be affecting their behavior, as they don't feel safe. They don't trust you or other adults to keep them safe. So they'll handle it. They'll try to control everything. Love and belonging. How do you fit in with people? How do you feel about yourself and how you fit in with people? Do you feel loved? Are you able to give and receive affection appropriately? Are you able to give and receive attention appropriately? And of course, the next level is esteem. How do I feel about myself? And for many of our kids that have disabilities, a lot of times they don't feel all that good about themselves. They might struggle with making friends or keeping friends. They might be in a special classroom at school that affects their ability to really interact with other kids that are not disabled. I know a lot of programs have the peer mentoring or the peer tutoring, and that's an awesome program because for a lot of our kids that gets them interacting with others. And then self-actualization is being able to set your dreams, set your goals, and then do the things it takes to meet those goals. And so just wanted to spend a few minutes on that so that you start to understand that your child's behavior is either meeting one of those needs or they're pushing away, they're feeling like that need's not met, and so they're feeding into that negative piece on that. All right. So when you're looking at behavior and strategies, we all have strategies we use for discipline. A lot of times it's whatever we learned from our parents. And for some of us, if we didn't learn great ways from our parents, then we've either gone to classes to learn more, or we've talked to other parents, or we watched shows on TV to learn more, but we did something to improve our discipline techniques so that they were not as punitive and they were more about learning and teaching. So one thing we have to remember is, I've already said, we have to know whether or not the discipline strategy we use will meet that underlying need. That's one piece of it. And that second piece is the strategy you're using teaching your child to decrease the behavior you don't want and increase the behavior you do want? So with that said, you need to see if that behavior is logical or natural consequence. So let's look at natural and logical consequences. So the difference, and I'm going to do the natural consequence first. I probably should have them switched on the slide, but that's besides the point. So for natural consequences, it means the parent does not intervene. What happens when the parent doesn't intervene? So for instance, your child leaves their bike outside, you've told them to pick it up, they don't, it gets stolen. That's the natural consequence. And you don't replace it. That was their choice. The natural consequence, it got stolen. If they need to make a police report, you might help them call the police or practice with them to call the police or sit with them while they call the police. Or if they leave the bike out and it gets rained on over and over and over until it's rusty and it's not a very good bike. Those are natural consequences. You did not intervene. Sometimes you don't want to allow the natural consequences to occur. When can you not allow the natural consequences to occur? Let's put that in the chat box, please, or the question box. When can you not allow natural consequences? And natural consequences also means the behavior you're doing is ignoring. You're not having to jump in. You're just going to ignore it and let's see what happens. Absolutely. When it could potentially harm your child or harm someone else, then you can't just sit and ignore that. Anything else?
Someone else had said the same thing, when it may be harmful to the child.
Thank you, Stella. Great. It also, even if it's not going to be harmful to the child, but the loss is greater than the learning that they're going to gain from it, then you might have to intervene. So for instance, if your child just got this bike and you're thinking, my child just got this bike for Christmas, it cost a lot of money, I can't afford to get a new bike, and they need to keep that bike in good shape. So it's not, letting the natural consequence occur is not worth the trade-off of the cost of the bike. And you have to make that decision as a parent, and different parents are going to make different decisions. I told the group last Friday when I trained, I don't have a magic wand. If I did, I'd rent it out to everybody and I would be very wealthy right now, but I don't have that. So, lack of having a magic wand to share with all of you, you're going to have to decide which which discipline techniques work for you and your family. It's not a one size fits all, not with discipline. Parents have to figure out what works for them and their child. So let's look at logical consequences. So your child leaves their bike outside. You've told them 3 times to go pick it up and put it away. They are ignoring you. So the logical consequence would be maybe you go put it up, but you lock it up so they can't use it for a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week. And that depends on how old your child is, how long that span is, and not just their age, but their intellectual capabilities. You know, if it goes too far, have they lost their bike and they feel like it's forever? And so they can just, they're in a pit and they can't climb out, so they're just going to keep digging deeper. Or, you know, is you can't ride it this afternoon, we'll talk about it again in the morning. Is that enough to make the point? I don't know. You know your child. But a logical consequence is when the consequence fits the crime. So if the logical consequence for leaving your bike outside would not be necessarily you're grounded from your video games. It might be if that's why they didn't go get their bike. But if video games had nothing to do with why they didn't go get their bike, then you would not necessarily tie that as the behavior. So the logical consequences, the consequence fits the crime, fits the negative behavior, so to speak. Any questions about logical and natural consequences? But those who said natural consequences, you cannot do it when it is harmful. If your child is threatening to hurt themselves or hurt someone else, they are threatening to kill themselves or take their own lives, you cannot ignore it. It doesn't matter if in your heart of hearts as a parent, you believe they are just doing it for attention. You still have to do something with that. You can't just hold on to that. You don't want to look back and say, what if I had done something differently? So anytime running away, hurting themselves, and some kids will, you know, make their own tattoos or do their own piercings or branding using it, you know, metal and something hot. And so any of those types of behaviors you cannot just ignore, or if it's hurting other kids, or if it's illegal behavior. So you need to be aware. Those are some of the things you cannot ignore. All right, I saw somebody have a question over here, so let me go back. What do you do when your child exhibits harmful behaviors when faced with consequences? Hopefully we'll get to that. If we don't, bring it back up, okay? Whoever put that in the chat box, thank you. So usually you want to decide, if it's not a big deal, let the natural consequence happen. Learning happens when something doesn't go the way you expect it to. And our kids do not need to be saved from life. We need to give them a safe environment in which to learn, live, and grow. And so sometimes part of that learning is being able to learn from the mistakes that they make without you having to get in the middle of it. So if you're seeing something going on, stop and think, can I allow the natural consequence to happen? Yes, just keep an eye on it and let the natural consequence happen. And when you go to help them afterwards, you don't get to say, I told you so, though I probably said that many a time, let's be honest. But realizing that's not what they need to hear at that time. So just realize that. And if you think you have to intervene, then what is the logical consequence? If you can do that, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So that's okay. We're going to get into a little bit more of that. So I'm going to try to pull up my worksheet again. Stella or someone, if you'll tell me whether or not you see it, we're going to go back to these behaviors we talked about earlier.
Yes, you are good to go. I see it on your screen.
Thank you so much. All right. So talking back, yelling, blaming. So some of this verbal aggression. And that would include some of these. Let me put them all together up here. And then we also have some physical aggression down here. And that's the throwing, the hitting. And the spitting probably would go under that because that is a physical behavior. All right, and I'm going to scoot the lying on down. So when we talked about those 5 human needs, physiological survival, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization, why might your child be verbally aggressive? Why might they be back talking? Why might they be yelling and blaming? What's going on with that? So put that in the chat box. You got to play detective. What need? Why are they acting that way? Okay, I saw hungry. Could be. So that could be physiological. Feel unheard. They need attention. You got any more on your side, Stella?
I'm looking right now.
Thank you.
I think you got the feeling heard, yeah.
Okay.
Unable to communicate verbally, I see that one.
Yep, I just got that one.
Not getting their way. Because they see parents yell and when they're upset.
Okay, that's a good list, you all. So when we looked at those 5 needs, if they're hungry, it would fall under physiological. Physically, their body is reacting. If I told my parents that when I was a kid, they wouldn't have bought that. But we do know now that hunger and other physiological needs can really affect your mood. And we see that with people who get that hangry, as they call it, Hangry. Needing attention, that falls under love and belonging. Not getting their way, that is safety. Meaning, I think I know better than you, so you need to follow my rules instead of me following your rules. Trying to get these so you can see them well. So when you look at these, what about modeled for them? Which of those 5 needs might it fall under? And the same for unable to communicate and feel unheard. What might those fall under? Unable to communicate could be a few different ones I'm thinking, but right off the bat, I'm thinking that maybe it goes under safety, because if they're not able to communicate about their environment and what their needs are to a child, or to many of us, that would feel like I can't keep myself safe because I can't keep my environment safe because I can't communicate what my needs are. That may not be right, but that's what I'm thinking. If we're talking about it being modeled for them, then that might go back to maybe that's love and belonging. I'm not sure. There's no exact science to this. It's really about you as the parent who knows your child best. It's really about you playing detective and making the best guess you can because you know your child the best. So you can see we've kind of got a few under here. So I'm going to make these all highlighted in yellow so they match our verbal aggression. All right, we're going to look at the physical aggression. You all had lots of parts on that. Throwing things, hitting, spitting, kicking, scratching, any of those types of behaviors are the physical aggression. And so what do you think, what might be some of the reasons that your child is behaving physically aggressive? Remember, they're communicating to you. What might they be telling you? That's what we got to think about. What might they be telling you? Put that in the chat box, guys.
Somebody said tired.
Yep.
Not getting their, well, that was already a given, not getting their way.
Yeah.
Seeing if there's anything else. I don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, that don't like what is happening, which would also be the same as not getting their way. Hey, you got any more?
Here's one more. It just popped in. Let's see. It says frustrated because not communicating well, no other way to express their feelings.
Yep, that's exactly true. That's why I said that's how they're communicating to you, because they don't have the words a lot of times, or they don't have the maturity to put the words with what they're feeling, and so instead they behave it. That's how they communicate with you. So they might be communicating really well with their behavior. It just means you have to play that detective and figure out how to interpret what they're telling you, which is a little challenging. All right. So if we're looking at the tired, that goes back to that physiological need that we talked about. It's something physically their body is not getting to stay healthy, happy, and happy. And so I don't know about you all, but I'm always tired. I always look like this, bags under my eyes and everything else, because I'm always tired. It's just life. They don't like what is happening. That's probably going to fall under safety. I don't trust you to make the rules. I trust me to make the rules. I want it my way. And let's get it, guys. That's typical for kids of certain ages. Takes them, they get into their 20s before some of them really get that. That's just life. And that's not kids with disabilities. That's a lot of kids. So our kids with disabilities, depending on what their disability is, that can really affect how they manage those thoughts that are running through their head and those feelings that are running between their head and their heart. So,
oh, here's a good one, Carol. It says situation is out of their control.
Oh, absolutely. That's going to go under safety. Absolutely. Thank you, Stella. All right. So great sharing, guys. I'm not sure about the not communicating well. I'm going to leave it under safety. It could be love and belonging. It just depends on the situation. Again, that's where you have to know your child. All right, we're going to look at lying, just because that's when I dealt with a lot and it really drove me crazy. Let's talk about why our child might be lying. Put it in the chat box. What do you think? What are they telling you? What are they communicating to you when they lie? Fear of consequence, absolutely. What else?
Because they don't want to disappoint you.
Absolutely.
They don't feel safe telling the truth. Afraid of being sent away.
For whoever said afraid of being sent away, do you mean like being sent to live somewhere else? Or do you mean like time out or going to their room? So those are big differences depending on your child. To have to live somewhere else. So if you're a foster or adoptive parent, and if your children, if you're a foster parent, then your kids maybe have been in different places. And so, yeah, absolutely. So that would mean they don't feel safe because they are afraid you're going to send them somewhere else. So that feeling safe covers a lot of things. To avoid the consequences or fear of the consequences, absolutely.
And someone said trying to cover for someone.
Oh, covering for someone else. All right. Okay.
I think going back, I'm sorry. going back to the fear of, having to go live somewhere else,
Uh-huh.
I've seen that a lot with like split families, where if you don't do this, you're going to have to go live with your dad, or if you act like this, you're going to have to live with your mom. And I've seen that a whole lot, and that puts kids in a really horrible situation.
Hmm. Talk about not feeling safe. When you don't feel like you have any control in your environment, you don't feel safe. So let's look at those 5 needs. So physiological, I don't think we have physiological here. We do have safety everywhere in here. So they don't feel safe, definitely. Love and belonging. They don't want to disappoint you. The good news is, hey, your kids value your opinion. Woohoo! You've done something right. That they don't want to disappoint you. That's a good thing. Or they're covering for someone else because they want that person to like them or be their friend, or that's the friend code, whatever it is. So both of those would fall under love and belonging. What do you think about fear of consequence? Which one of those 5 needs might it fall under? If it were your child, what would be your best guess? To avoid consequences or fear of consequences? For my son, it probably would have been a safety issue. For some kids, it might be that love and belonging issues. And for some of our kids, my youngest son, he was never diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder. We didn't see the hyperactivity, but we did see some of the distractibility and the impulsivity. And a few years back, I found an article that talked about kids that have ADD or ADHD. Often their first response is lying. It just is automatic. That's the impulsivity is to say a lie. And not sure really why that is. I guess, their brain works so fast, we know they shoot things out of their mouth before they think about it. But the other piece is that I think is that a lot of times they're so used to being in trouble or not doing something right, they automatically make up what they think you want to hear as opposed to what the truth is. And my youngest son did that a lot. And now he would still go do whatever I asked him to do, but his first response would be to tell me something that wasn't true. It was just bizarre. So when I read that study on that, I was really surprised by that. All right, I'm trying to color code these so when we come back, you'll have some ideas. All right, I'm going to take that down and we will come back to it and look at strategies. So we got to look at strategies. All right. The basket thinking we're not going to spend a lot of time on, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on it. There's a book by Dr. Ross Greene, and he talks about using this strategy, what he calls the basket thinking. And your basket A are the non-negotiables, and they're different for every family. So basket A should be your smallest basket. There should be very few things that you're not willing to negotiate. So in my house, wearing your helmet when you rode your bike, non-optional. I know that's not for everybody, and that's fine. I'm not saying it has to be for everybody. I'm saying that was a non-negotiable for my family. So put in the chat box what some of the non-negotiables are for your family that are safety related. This is how it is. It just is what it is. It's not going to change. Anybody have answers for the chat box? I'm not seeing any on my side. Stella, are y'all getting any on your side?
I'm looking. Someone said my child is on the spectrum and would lie because he didn't want to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that love and belonging again. I want to fit in. I want to fit in so badly. I'll do whatever it takes to fit in so badly. No riding in the back of the pickup truck. Thank you. Yes, that would be definitely safety related. Wearing your seatbelts when you're in the car. That would be safety related. If you have rules like, if depending on where you live, that you can't ride your bike in the road, those are your safety related non-negotiables. Basket C, it's your middle basket. Don't prank people with food. Being quiet while I'm trying to do a webinar. Ha ha ha. That's a good one. So basket C, those are the behaviors you can ignore, kind of like them not being quiet while you're doing webinar. Nobody said it was easy, but it can be done. And maybe no one will get hurt. So basket C is your medium-sized basket. And it's those behaviors you can ignore. They might drive you crazy, but nobody's going to get hurt. So that might be the clingy behavior where they're just stuck to your side all the time. That might be the yelling. It might be eye rolling. Yeah, it just might really get on your nerves. For my son, it was cussing. My sons were 8 and 9 when we adopted them. They already had a very rich vocabulary. And so, cussing and screaming, we just ignored a lot of that. So what you have to remember about this basket C, you as the parent have to decide what goes in that basket C, and you will get a lot of advice from your friends and extended family members. And they will tell you that does not belong in basket C. My dad often thought the screaming and the cussing, we would just send him to his room and he'd be in his room with the door closed, screaming and a cussing. That ain't hurting nobody. If he was feeling that frustrated, he needed to get it out. Okay. But my dad just could not stand that. That just got on his nerves so bad that we just needed to spank him, or we just needed to do that. And my boys came from an abusive background. Spanking wasn't going to work. We had to be more creative than that. And spanking doesn't work for many children. And so you have to make that choice also for your family about spanking. I'm not going to tell you what to do and what works for your family. You have to decide that. But there's a lot of behaviors you can ignore. They just drive you crazy. Them following you around, asking you the same question 100 times. Or my niece used to always go, please, 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 please. And she didn't know if she had to do it for an hour or if she had to do it for 5 hours. But eventually she'd get the yes. So she learned very early on that things didn't go in basket C because her parents couldn't ignore the please, please, please. She would follow them around for hours. Please, please. It's hard to ignore, but you can ignore. So think about what goes in that basket. Those things you can ignore. Eye rolling, clinginess, the screaming and the yelling. If they're not spitting on people, you might be able to ignore that, or give them a cup to spit in if they're wanting to spit. And then sometimes for little kids, they're just learning, spitting and biting are just kind of things they do depending on age. So let's look at basket B, because that's where the big things are. Basket B is all the things you will negotiate. And this is going to be different for every child in your house. And so one time I was at a training and I heard the presenter say, I didn't like anything else in the presentation, but I liked this. He said, equal doesn't mean fair. Equal means everybody gets their needs met. Or let me say that backwards. Fair doesn't mean everything's equal. Fair means everybody gets their needs met. Sorry about that. I said that backwards. I haven't said it in a long time. But I loved that because every kid in your family and in your house is different. And so you have to be able to figure out what works for them. So you're going to negotiate things based on your child's interest, based on your child's strengths and needs, and their maturity level. And so, you oftentimes will have an 8-year-old who says, it's not fair because my 13-year-old sibling, they get to ride their bike on the road. That's not fair. Well, sure it is. There's a big age difference there. Sure it is. my kids, and I think all kids do it, if my daughter was in dance class and she needed new dance shoes, then her younger brother would say, "That's not fair. She got new shoes." And I'd say, "Oh, do you need dance shoes?" "Well, no, but I need them for this." "Okay, well, when baseball comes around and you need baseball cleats, we'll look at them then." "Oh, okay." So just realize there's so many things you can negotiate: privileges, the chores that they do, the clothes that they wear. And when I say you can negotiate clothes, I don't mean from this terrible little outfit that shows everything to this other terrible outfit. I mean, you decide what's appropriate, this or this, and they're both appropriate, and now your child can choose which one to wear. For my older boys, when I would go to pick them up at aftercare, I could just scan the field that they played in. And the two boys that were most mismatched, those were mine, because we let them pick their own clothes out. So they never matched. And for some families, that's a big deal to look put together. For me, it was not a big deal. It's not a real big deal for me now. It wasn't a real big deal for me then, for me personally or for my kids. So just realizing. And so for a lot of kids, you can say, "Well, I want this and you want this. What are we going to do so that we both are happy?" And kids can sometimes figure that out, especially as they start to mature. It helps teach them compromise and problem solving, flexibility, and it helps teach them that the world is really very gray. Immaturity, you think in very black and white, either yes or no, all or nothing. But the reality is most of our world is gray, and most of our thinking needs to happen in those gray lines. Most of life is not all or nothing. It's all in between. And so helping our kids learn that can be very powerful for them. It also teaches them how to negotiate. I didn't learn that as a kid. It was my way or the highway. And I respect my dad for that. That worked for us and for him. But that's not what I wanted to teach my kids. I wanted to teach my kids to know how to negotiate. And sometimes let them win the negotiation if it's not a big deal. You, as a parent, have to decide when you dig in and when you let go. All right, so I'm going to bring back up our sheet, and we're going to look at some strategies. All right, so in the chat box, if your child is being verbally aggressive, they're talking back, they're yelling, they're always blaming someone else, and it could be because they're hungry, they don't feel heard, they have communication struggles, they need attention. What are some of the strategies you're going to use to meet their need? Put that in the chat box or the question box, guys. If they're hungry, we're going to have snacks available. Regular feeding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I got
that one. Okay.
Absolutely. You're going to have that feeding schedule or have snacks available. Different people need different amounts of food at different times in the day. Depending on the age of your child, they might need to have a schedule that includes a rest or a break time. Feelings chart, or talking with them about what they're feeling, helping them label their emotions. Absolutely. But you have to have a schedule, and you have to think whether or not it needs a snack. Does it need a nap time? Does it need a quiet time? Hope I spelled that wrong. Sorry, guys. So you have to figure that out as the parent. What does your child need when it comes to the schedule? Okay. You have to find positive ways for them to get that attention met. So some kids like a lot of attention, and some kids don't want any attention. You have to know your kid. And so if you have a child that needs a lot of attention and they'll get it positively or negatively, they don't care, they'll take either one, then you have to find ways to to work on the positive attention. And so sometimes you might have to model that for them. And we said, so they maybe have had the screaming and the back talking modeled for them. Maybe we have to model the appropriate way. So what often happens between people, not just parents and kids, but when one starts yelling, then the other one starts yelling because we feel like we have to speak over them to be heard. And so the volume just keeps going up. What you have to do though as the parent or as the mature one, if it's you and someone at work or you and a spouse, you have to mirror what you want. So if the other person gets loud, don't equal that. Don't let them set the tone. You come back down and you talk really softly and you talk really calmly. And a lot of times that's going to bring them back down. So model what you want. It might also be that you have to teach them specifically what you want and practice it. So if you have a whiny child, I'm not good with whiny either. I'll just own up to it. If you have a whiny child, and that's part of an age range also, a maturity level. I know if you're cooking dinner or you're doing something and they come in and go, I would just turn around or stop what I was doing and I would say, I really can't understand you when you talk that way. You need to talk in your big girl voice. And my daughter was probably about 3 or 4. I said, and I would just turn around calmly again and say, I'm really sorry, I can't understand you. You need to use your big girl voice. And then I turn back around. And then eventually, and I would just keep saying that same thing over and over and over again. And then sometimes I would even say, here's how you need to say it. Mom, Cooper's been picking on me and I need your help. No, you need to say, Mom, Cooper's been picking on me and I need your help. And I would just keep doing that over and over till they set it back. And then, of course, I gave them my immediate attention and responded to what it was they were telling. So I was giving them positive feedback for the positive behavior. So practice that. Teach it to them. Sometimes you have to tell them exactly what to say or do. If they don't feel safe, this could be about safety, then you have to find things they can control. Somebody asked last week when I talked about that, they said, how does control go to safety? Well, if I don't trust you to control my environment, I don't trust you to keep my environment safe, then I'm going to be extremely controlling. So you have to give me choices. So you need to allow the child to have the choices that are appropriate for their age and maturity level by giving them choices so they can have control over something. Might be what program they're going to watch. It might be what video game they're going to play. There is a curriculum that's called Becoming a Love and Logic Parent, and it talks a lot about choices, even such things as when you're tucking them in bed. Do you want your blankets tucked up high or do you want your blankets tucked down low? Do you want the light on? Do you want the light on? Oh, you need a glass of water? Do you want a straw with that or do you not want a straw with that? You want ice in it or you don't want ice? So even all those little choices at least help kids to start to feel a little bit of control about their environment. So that giving those choices when you can and letting them control the things they think about, that's a good way to handle that. Let's look at the physical aggression. We're talking again, a lot of these same things will do. If they're tired, you've got to have that schedule. They don't like what's happening. They might feel like the situation is out of their control. Again, you might have to help them label their emotions. You're sounding really frustrated. Oh, that would really hurt my feelings too. So you need big doses of empathy. And some of the things we have up at above that. Model what you want. If they're feeling that frustrated, what can they do to get out that frustration and then that negative energy? Can they take a walk? Can they run around in the yard? Can they, do they have boxing gloves and a boxing bag that they can hit? What can they do to physically? A lot of times sports are good for kids that are very physical. They need the sports to help them. The lying, model telling the truth, praise when you get the truth. And sometimes our kids, maybe our kids with ADHD and other challenging disabilities, it could affect the lying. And so for my son, a lot of times I just had to tell him, kind of like I did with my daughter for the whining. Here's how you need to say it. And I would say it and wait for them to say it verbatim back to me. So for my son, even at 19, he would lie about stupid things. And I would just say, Bill, here's what you're gonna say. I didn't do it. I'm not lying. Bill, here's what you're going to say. Mom, I did it. I'm sorry I did it. It won't happen again. And I just would keep saying that until he would verbatim share it back. And I'd say, okay, now go fix that. And we're done with it. And it didn't always involve a lot of big consequences, but he didn't know how to find the words that he needed to share. Okay, I know we're running out of time. So we've talked about the baskets. Here are other strategies, making a game of it. We know with children that works. With older kids, you can do journaling back and forth. You write and ask them some open-ended questions, let them write back to you. You respond to that, and you just have a conversation. For kids, a lot of times a journal with a parent allows them to say things and answer things that they wouldn't tell you face to face. Because when you're journaling it, a lot that takes out tone of voice, that takes out facial expression, it takes out body language, and it allows you to actually hear what the other person is saying a lot of times by doing it in writing. We talked about natural and logical consequences. If your child's behavior is severe, you might need to be getting some outside help. You might need to be looking for a therapist. You might need to be talking to a teacher or someone who better understands your child's disability and how that might affect their behavior. Here's just our contact information, my email. We are on Facebook and we share a lot of information on there. We do have our website. So I don't mind hanging on here, Stella, if people have questions. I don't know how you all handle that at the end.
Absolutely. I'm checking to see if anyone has any right now. Let's see what we've got here. It says texting for older kids is fantastic because they can often express in written form so much more than verbal. I like that.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we didn't have cell phones and texting when my kids were younger. That wasn't an option. I just bought journals for them and we would write back and forth. Or my boys, we would do on the computer. My older boys, we would do it on the computer, and that helped a lot. What do you do when your child has harmful behaviors when faced with consequences? You might have to physically intervene as far as, holding them so they don't hurt themselves. And then also try to help them start to figure out consequences that are logical or natural if appropriate. But if they feel like, and some of our kids, because of their maturity level, if they feel like they're going to lose everything, like the one consequence is like everything's gone, then you need to help them start to understand. So instead of a timeout, you might do a sit out. A timeout is a longer period of time where they're away from you and whoever else they were interacting with. The sit out is just sit down here. It's 30 seconds long or less, just so that they comply for a few seconds. And then you say, oh, are you ready to come back and join us? So that's one thing you can do. Any other questions?
I'm
Stella,
looking again.
Do you all do evaluations somehow?
Yes, we do. What we'll do, Carol, is at the end of when they log out, there will be an option for them to do an evaluation.
Okay.
And we encourage them to complete that evaluation for us. And but yes, there is an evaluation at the end.
All right, thank you. If you'll share that data with me once you get it, I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And like I said, guys, if you want more information, know that I'm doing the longer version on December 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can go to kypartnership.org if you want to sign up for that. Some of it will be repetitive from today, but some of it will be different. So feel free to join us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we did put your website in there, and then they'll get they'll get your PowerPoint with all of your information in there too, with your website there also. So thank you all so much for joining us. Carol, thank you. What great information.
Thank you for allowing me.
I loved it.
Thanks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, at the end, you will be prompted to complete the evaluation. We appreciate everyone joining us. This is actually our last webinar for 2020, but we already have our all lined up and we'll be sending out today too the link for those that you can register. So again, thank you all, and have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and stay safe.